It is now 9:30 a.m. I will call this organizational meeting of the municipality of Jasper to order for October 26, 2021. Councillors, you have today's proposed agenda. Are there any additions or deletions required to be made to the agenda? As it's an organizational meeting, the structure is pretty much set in advance, so I would ask for a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Thank you, Councillor Melnick. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. First order of business is our meeting schedule, agenda 4.1. We are to set the date, time, and place for regular meetings. Any discussion about that or a motion? Councillor Demota.
Not a motion, but just a little bit of discussion, because I was always a promoter of having a little bit of a stretch in the middle of summer between July and August to have a little bit of a break. And I noticed that it was included for 2022, which didn't take me by surprise, but it was welcomed. And having said that, I noticed that the gap between our last regular meeting and the next committee of the whole is going to be a stretch of 3 weeks. And I'm just putting it out there to see if there was any interest in changing some of that up. I couldn't structurally work it into a good process, but I'm not sure if that was the intention, or if that's just a consequence of, providing that break. So if you look at July 19th, and by the time we get to the committee of the whole on the 9th, that will be 3 weeks before we have any discussions on any topics.
Sorry, okay. Were you ready to conclude, Councillor Demota?
I'm concluded, yeah, sorry. I was just make sure I actually had it right, because on the calendar it doesn't look that far apart, but it is actually 21 days.
Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't notice that until now. Thank you for bringing it up, Councillor Demota, but I think that's really the essence of the break. 3 weeks shouldn't be too long, and I think if there is crucial business to be done, we could call a special meeting within. So I would welcome having that break included as it is now, and we could always modify if need be. Say there's a reason to have a regular council meeting because of wildfire, emergency, etc. We can work that in, but I'm not sure we need to fill it with meetings when it's obviously a nice time to have a good stretch of break.
All right, go ahead, Councillor Demota.
Yeah, I'm not going to make a motion to change it. This is just more of a discussion for consensus, really, just to throw some thought out there. And I don't want to make our meeting longer than it needs to be today, but just throwing out the idea of, on the 26th of July, having a regular committee of the whole, and then bumping back the next regular meeting to the 9th, and then we have a committee on the 16th, regular meeting on the 23rd, and then committee on the 30th. That still gives us a break, but throws a little bit more of a flow into the regular mix. Just an idea, and I'm sorry it's a surprise, but it's just something that I thought about yesterday and didn't have time to reach out to everybody.
All right, thank you for that. Councillor Melnick.
I'd like to speak in maintaining the calendar. for the reason that was mentioned, that it is a scheduled break. The public will get to know our schedule, where the committee of the whole meets on certain days and the regular council meet on certain days. August will be a little bit of a crazy month anyway, because it's going to be reversed. But also, just to make note, we're talking about the council meeting calendar, and it currently is scheduled for 9:30 a.m. At that time should be discussed whether that's appropriate, whether 9:30 a.m. is a time we wish to have regular council meetings, or we wish to move that back to an afternoon meeting. And before voting, we should probably resolve that issue as well.
Thank you, Councillor Melnick. Councillor Keller-Hempy.
I'm happy to go with the calendar that's presented for the meetings. I agree with Councillor Wilson that if an emergency come up, we can always call another meeting. I do support going to afternoons for council meetings, going back to 1:30 to 4:30. I think in the last year, Mr. Given has, with the motion to debate to forward our decisions onto council for decision, has really shortened our regular meetings. And I know that we always say Tuesday is very important because we can have other meetings, but we can still schedule those meetings for the mornings of the afternoon meetings. So I think it might be nice to try to go back to the original schedule when I first started on council, where we had committee of the whole full days, the second and fourth Tuesday, and the regular meetings on the first and third. I think that would be nice to retry that again. That is just my opinion, if anybody is interested.
Thank you for that. I've yet to hear a motion, so before anybody gets to a motion, I just wanted to speak to one item on the 2022 calendar. I see that we have tentatively at least booked a date for a community Christmas party for 2021, but we didn't do the same for 2022. So I don't know what that means, that we are more confident in the short term than the long term. I don't know. Anyway, I would simply suggest that there be an addition to the 2022 calendar to at least pencil in a date on perhaps December 23rd for the potential for a community Christmas party, as has been our tradition. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, just to speak a little further to one more thing. So I do agree. I'd like to move regular council meetings to 1:30. I support that. Keeping committee of the whole meetings set to 9:30 on every second Tuesday. I also support keeping the summer break the way it is, as represented in the calendar. The only other item that I would bring up, and sorry, of course, addition of the Christmas party for 2022. I just want everybody to look at budget meeting week. So that's the 22nd and 23rd of November. We're going to be away for the better part of the month, or the week before, November 15th through 19th with training. We're also going to be inundated with budget amongst those days, and trying to catch up and be ready for the night of the 22nd and for the 23rd. I guess as a question maybe to administration, do we see the need for a committee of the whole meeting on Tuesday morning, as well as evening budget? Because I'm not sure there's going to be much more discussion other than budget on the 23rd. So my only suggestion would be that we not cancel committee of the whole. We could then just change the time Committee of the Whole. So the evening budget meetings will be the 22nd and 23rd. Council will be quite busy returning from being away, but then we will only have to be available for the night of the 22nd and for the night of the 23rd. And the days would be our ability to catch up on both personal items, work, and catch up on budget.
Mr. Given, go ahead.
Your worship, I think I heard a question for administration there. So at this time, we do have it tentatively booked for, as it shows on the calendar, for Committee of the Whole on November 23rd. If council chooses to forgo that meeting, recognizing that it is going to be a pretty heavy workload over the next number of weeks, particularly on that day with budget, that would be fine with administration. And really, it is just agenda management on our part. We need to make sure that if there are priority items that need to get in front of council, that we get them to the agendas that the meetings that do exist, and that we can shuffle other items, to meetings later on in the year or early in the new year. I think that that's eminently manageable, and it would be no problem from an administration perspective if that Committee of the Whole meeting of the 23rd was not on the calendar.
Sir, if I may just jump in just to finish off, my apologies, Councillor Demota, but I just noticed as well the 30th of November is the 5th Tuesday, so we could then use that. Well, I'm sure Councillor Demota was about to say that, but yeah, the 30th would be a good date for another Committee of the Whole if we need it, but I think piling everything onto the 23rd might be a bit much.
Thank you, Councillor Demota.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, and saying that, when you brought that up, Councillor Wilson, I was thinking of the 30th again, because if we do forego having a Committee of the Whole on the 23rd, it'll give us an opportunity to assess a lot of the information on the 30th that we received on the 22nd, 23rd. We go away for, pretty much a week with to digest a lot of that new stuff that we might be getting. And I think that it would be healthy to move that back. Next, I'm also in favor of moving the regular meeting to regular meetings to 1:30. And with regards to the summer break, I welcome it. I just thought it would be a good round discussion to get some cobwebs out and start us off. And then for the community Christmas party, if we're going to pick a date for the 2022, I would like to suggest having it the week before. Traditionally, we have it on the Friday before Christmas, but that Friday, with Christmas being on the weekend, is a potential travel day for a lot of people to get home or to where they need to visit on the 24th. So I think that makes things feel a little, there's a lot of pressure on that date. So I would recommend having that a day before if council's interested. I don't know how many motions would come with setting the date and time for this one. Maybe we can have separate ones, but I would like to start by addressing November and then moving forward.
All right. Thank you for all of that. We are required to set date, time, and place for regular meetings. We have a motion for that and a separate motion for setting the date, time, and place for Committee of the Whole meetings. It is a bit extraneous, but necessary to recognize that we have to forward plan for, say, a community Christmas party. But if I might encourage someone to make a motion to adopt for the 2021-2022 term, at least until the next organizational meeting, a motion to set date, time, and place for regular meetings. The one, and I see you, Councillor Melnick, the one thing that, well, let me just check. Does it say, yeah, it says on the attachment to the agenda that the meetings will be held at the Jasper Library and Cultural Center, but they will be held over this platform until we're able to return there. But subject to that, if somebody could make a motion to adopt the calendar that has been presented, subject to a change of time from 9:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m., I think we resolve the issue of regular meetings, and then we can address committee of the whole meetings. Councillor Demota.
I don't have that motion. I was kind of,
I think Councillor Melnick does.
yeah, I wanted to debate after.
So I move that we do set the dates for the regular meetings of council as per the calendars attached, with the time for the regular council meetings to start at 1:30, that until further notice, we continue to use a Zoom platform for our council meetings.
Thank you for that motion. Councillor Melnick, before I call for debate, can I just ask you, Mr. Gibbon, on behalf of administration, does that motion sufficiently cover your needs from an administrative perspective?
Yes, Your Worship, I believe it does. And then I assume that we'd have the follow-up motion with respect to the committee meetings. And so this one dealing with regular is absolutely fine. And of course, council, you'll get another opportunity next October to set your upcoming calendar for that following year. So these other discussions about events in December of 2022, we'll absolutely be able to incorporate at that time. But yes, this meets administration's need and the requirement of council to set their calendar for committee meetings.
Right. Thank you very much. So just to confirm, Councillor Melnick's motion is that we adopt the calendar for regular meetings as presented with one change, and that is that regular council meetings would be held at 1:30 p.m. on the dates indicated rather than 9:30 a.m. And that although we're directing that the place be the Jasper Library and Cultural Center, until further notice, we'll continue to be on the Zoom platform. So that is the motion. Any debate? Councillor Demota.
Well, doing what we've always done doesn't mean it's always the right thing. And we never discussed if Tuesday was a date that we want to change, but it seems like the calendar is comfortably accepted to continue with the status quo. I'm great with the dates and times. I just wanted to point out, and I'm curious if anybody else heard or had any discussion with the greater community on the times. This was the first time I've campaigned and gone through the process where someone hasn't mentioned that we should have our meetings at night. And I was surprised by that. And I didn't think about that until I was looking at the schedule. And, we've tried several times before in the past to do that, and no one ever turned up. But now that, we have this virtual opportunity, that could be part of the discussion going forward. I don't have any desire to do that. I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Demota. Any further debate on the motion? All right, I will call the question in. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. The next item then is 4.2, which is to set the date, time, and place for committee of the whole meetings. Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, just 1 second here. Be resolved that council set the following dates. So the date would be the dates would be the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of the month. Time starting at 9:30 a.m. And 30 a.m. striking from the calendar November 23rd Committee of the Whole, and adding to the calendar November 30th Committee of the Whole. And I think that is all I need to add to that one.
I'm sorry, if I might just get you to confirm, Councillor Wilson, striking November 23rd of this calendar year.
Yeah, of 2021, and adding a Committee of the Whole for November 30th, 2021.
Thank you. And I think that you did say second and fourth Tuesdays, but I think your intent was to adopt the calendar presented with the change, eliminating the 23rd and adding the 30th of November, because otherwise you've eliminated the break that was discussed earlier.
That's correct. Thank you for the clarification. Yes, adopting the calendar as presented for Committee of the Whole, 9:30 meetings. And yes, to clarify, the 23rd of 2021 or November 2021 is struck, and the addition of the Committee of the Whole meeting for November 30th, 2021.
Right. Thank you for that motion. Is there any debate on that motion? Seeing nothing, I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Right, the meeting schedule is now set for both regular meetings and Committee of the Whole meetings. We now have to move to agenda item 5, which is to select a method of determining deputy mayor and the length of office. And can I have a motion in that respect? Councillor Keller-Grampi.
And I'd like to make a motion that we continue with 2 months term of deputy mayor, followed by an alternative deputy mayor schedule of 2 months for the upcoming year of 2021-22.
All right, thank you for that. I just checking the motion that has been provided. It doesn't, that would be approving the rotation, but not the assignments within that rotation. So let's do that first, and then we can get to assigning. So the motion is to approve a motion that we continue to alternate deputy mayor and alternate deputy mayor on a 2-month term commencing November 1st, 2021. Any debate on that motion? Right, I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That's carried. Not that it is necessarily required, but can we fill in the list now for the benefit of all? Councillor Wilson, I think I heard an offer from you yesterday to
Yeah, I was just putting my hand up there. I would volunteer for the first deputy mayor position, and not to say I'm going to set a great example for the new councillors, but I'll try my best. And so yeah, I would volunteer for November and December of 2021.
Councillor Melnick.
I would like to volunteer for the period of July 1st, August 31st, 2022.
Thank you. Councillor Keller-Grampi, and then Councillor Demota.
I'd like to volunteer from March 1 to April 30th, 2022.
Councillor Demota.
I like to volunteer for September 1, 2022 to October 31st, 2022. That works with my schedule really good. And I do want to say that you do set a good example, Councillor Wilson, and you run efficient meetings. So I'm looking forward to jumping in with you right away.
Thank you, Councillor Rhoda. Councillor Hall.
I would love to volunteer for the 2-month period of January 1st to February 28th. I will follow Scott's lead.
All right. Councillor Waxer doesn't leave you too many opportunities. All right. Now, typically, what we do as well is the alternate deputy mayor is the last serving deputy mayor. So with the exception of the period November 1st to December 31st, where we need to appoint somebody, the rest will just follow the order that's there. So I would propose that Councillor Demota, which would have been the case anyway, you would have continued as alternate deputy mayor. So that list then would be Councillor Demota, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Hall, Councillor Kelleher-MP, Councillor Waxer, and Councillor Melnick. We don't need a motion, but can I get a nod of approval? Is there any objection to that? There is no objection. It shall be done. Thank you for that. That takes us to committee structure. You have a list on the agenda which is different than the list that I provided to you, but ultimately, with one exception, I think the same identified boards and committees. I think what might be missing from what is on the agenda is the Jasper Community Team Society, but it is on the list that I circulated. And I have provided that list to administration as well. So I was aware of some exchange of emails between a couple of councillors concerning appointments. And I'm happy to adjust the appointments based on preferences to the extent possible. So Councillor Melnick and Councillor Kelleher-MP, can you just confirm the changes that you had discussed between yourselves?
So I'm going to be the alternate on Trans-Canada Yellowhead Highway Association, and Councillor Melnick will be the lead.
And I confirm that.
All right. Thank you. That weights your duties a little more, Councillor Melnick, and you are already weighted heavily, but I appreciate your willingness. Thank you very much. Is there anything else that any councillor wishes to speak to? Any assignment that is difficult for them? Councillor Demota.
I don't, not for anything that's difficult for me, but I do want to address one of the committees on there if once we're done discussing any conflicts.
Right, well, I see no other indication that there are conflicts, so if you want to go ahead.
Well, it's just in past discussion and a conversation that I had with you yesterday on the clarification of the inclusion committee, when we discussed that last, that was primarily part of an administrative committee. And I just wanted to have a little bit more clarification for the group and myself on how that ends up here on council boards and committees for us. When, and I will let Mr. Given
respond as well, but my recollection is that when it was presented that there was an intent to have an inclusion committee, without terms of reference, council appointed 2 of its members to sit on that. But the intent of the committee really is a staff committee to advise the CAO with respect to inclusion efforts for recruiting and retaining staff. It's an operational committee, not a policy committee. And so we received, I think it would be called a business plan or a forward-looking document recently from the Inclusion Committee, which includes an intent to develop terms of reference. And so until those terms of reference are confirmed, they may or may not include a provision for council members. And it may or may not be appropriate to have council members sitting on what is essentially a staff committee. So that is a matter which is just in a holding pattern now. But Mr. Given, if you wish to speak further and contradict me as you will, I could be wrong.
No, your worship, certainly wouldn't do that, not on the first meeting of the new council term, but and also because I think you got it exactly right. The Inclusion Committee was struck and council demonstrated their support for that work by having elected officials represented on the committee as it got started. But since that time, council has adopted a inclusion policy and has reviewed the first draft of our inclusion master plan. And we'll have a chance to approve the master plan and ultimately control the resources that are dedicated to inclusion work through the municipal budget. So council is really taking influence in the organization in their policy and governance role through the budget and through adoption of policies and approval of master plans. On an ongoing basis, it's likely that that committee will transition to be more of a staff committee, as the mayor referenced, very akin to workplace health and safety, where that committee will give advice to me and will act on the recommendations in the master plan according to the budget resources that council sets. So I think council has taken their leadership role in demonstrating that we want to have an inclusive workplace. I think, as the mayor reflected, when we bring forward that terms of reference for that internal committee as a part of the work plan, that will give us an opportunity to transition away from needing elected officials on that internal committee.
Councillor Demota.
Well, I appreciate the clarification on that. I wanted to bring forward an opportunity here because of a question that was raised at the candidates forum during the campaign stretch, and it was to councillors: in what way are we going to engage the Indigenous community of our area? And I don't know if that was ever fully answered. And I think the first step for us, I think, would be by asking. And I know that there's an Indigenous Partners Forum that Parks Canada has at least twice a year, from what I understand. And I know that in the past we may have been invited to maybe not the entire forum, but certain aspects of it. And I'm not asking that we sit at the table, but I think that, you know, the first step, we should reach out to our Indigenous Relations Office within Parks Canada to see, you know, whether we're wanted there or there's opportunities to engage in taking steps towards reconciliation. And I think, you know, I had a friend that turned me on to a person by the name of Chief Wilton Littlechild. And if I wanted to learn a little bit more about the steps that we needed to take, and I really like that. In one of the interviews that I saw is that one of the biggest gaps we have is coordinated efforts. And I think that, you know, because through a transitive relationship Parks Canada has, you know, with our Indigenous partners, that, you know, we have a relationship with Parks Canada, and I think that through that we should at least take a step forward and see, you know, what we should be doing with our efforts, and, you know, maybe not asking for a seat at the table, but at least seeing if we're wanted to participate. So if that means assignments from committees, or having a proper assignment, whether that be the mayor or an alternate, I think is important. And I'm not sure where the rest of council sits on that. I know it can't be decided today, but I think the first step we need to do is probably reach out to the Parks Canada Relations Office. How does everyone feel about that?
Well, thank you for that, Councillor Demota. From my perspective, and it's only my perspective, the Inclusion Committee has looked at this issue deeply. The Inclusion Committee came to us with a draft of a land acknowledgement, which certainly is a step toward reconciliation and engaging with the Indigenous community. So although I agree with your notion that we should look for further opportunities to be engaged, I would suggest that we have already started that route, and the Inclusion Committee, whether or not it has councillors on it, is engaged, and I look forward to further advice from that committee as to how, as an organization and as a council, we can continue to engage with Indigenous partners and work toward reconciliation. So I recognize that it is an ongoing effort, but I think the effort is underway, and we've taken steps through the Inclusion Committee, which will continue to increase, I think.
I just wanted to say that the same friend that turned me on, and I recommend people, just if you don't know too much about Chief Wilton Littlechild, it's a really good step into watching some interviews to understand the importance of moving reconciliation forward. And the same friend also told me that he used the term reconciliation, and I looked that up, and and reconciliation is a meaningful action that moves reconciliation forward. And I think that we need to stay cognizant of that, and I'm glad that that's on our Inclusion Committee as a priority within our Inclusion Committee. And I still think that taking the necessary steps forward would be like reaching out and asking what our role should be, and if that's part of what's included in that, then I'm for it. But I don't want it to be something that sits idle for this term anyway. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Demota. Is there anything else then with respect to appointments to boards and committees? Rather than run through the list, we have a motion. Well, let's first deal with the approval of the list of committees and boards. I think that is the first motion that we have. And so the document that is provided on the agenda, with the exception of the Jasper Community Team Society, I think is the proposed list of boards and committees, and subject to the comments that have already been made with respect to the Inclusion Committee. So with that one adjustment, the addition of Jasper Community Team Society, could I have a motion to approve that list of boards and committees? Councillor Waxer?
Okay, be it resolved that council approve the list of committees and boards for the year 2021-22 as attached with the addition of the Jasper Community Team Society.
Thank you, Councillor Waxer. Any debate on that motion? I'll call the question. All in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. On the agenda, there is not a list of the appointments, but that list has been provided to council and to administration. So rather than go through separate motions, I would propose that a councillor make a motion that council appoints the councillors to the following committees and boards as indicated on the list provided to councillors and administration, with the one change of Trans-Canada Yellowhead Highway Association, making Mr. Melnick the appointee and Councillor Kelleher MP the alternate. Councillor Wilson.
For the benefit of the audience, if we were voting on, we're making a motion for appointments, is it possible for administration to screen share that attachment? It could be because it's not attached to the agenda itself.
Your worship, if I'm working from the one that you shared with the administration today, appreciate this is one of the duties of the mayor, is to help sort out the council appointments and ensure everybody gets a workload that is appropriate. I do have the one that you sent to administration, and I could put that on share if council would like to see that. And you'll have to excuse me, it's just in a Microsoft Word document, but this is the list here. Shows the boards and committees, as well as the number of council members required and who is the recommended name. I can just briefly run down the list again for the record. Communities in Bloom would be Councillor Waxer. The community conversations, there's a number of them this term in alignment with the new policy. The Jasper Community Team Society, the appointed member would be Councillor Demota with an alternate of Mayor Ireland. The early childhood conversation would be Councillor Kelleher MP with an alternate of Councillor Wilson. The school-aged conversation would be Councillor Wilson with an alternate of Councillor Kelleher MP. The adult conversation would be Councillor Hall, backed up by Councillor Demota. Seniors would be Councillor Waxer, backed up by Councillor Melnick. Arts and Culture, Mayor Ireland, backed up by Councillor Waxer. The Recreation conversation, Councillor Melnick, supported by Councillor Demota. And Environmental Responsibility, Councillor Demota, backed up by Councillor Hall. The Emergency Advisory Committee is all members of council. The Evergreens Foundation requires 1 + 1 alternate, and Councillor Kelleher MP would be councillor's appointment to that, backed up by Councillor Melnick. Hospitality and Twinned Communities requires 2 councillors, and we have Councillor Melnick and Councillor Waxer. The Human Resource Committee is comprised of 3 councillors, and that would be Councillors Hall, Melnick, and Waxer. The Inclusion Committee, as we just discussed, would be no council members appointed this time, as we just earlier discussed. The Jasper Community Housing Corporation requires 2 council members and 1 alternate, and that would, the appointees would be Councillors Wilson and Melnick, backed up by Councillor Hall. The Municipal Library and Yellowhead Regional Library each require appointees. Councillor Hall would be the appointee to both of those, and we would have an alternate for the Yellowhead Regional Library System backing up Councillor Hall. That would be Councillor Waxer. The Jasper Partnership Initiative would be Mayor Ireland with an alternate of Councillor Waxer. The Yellowhead Historical Society and Museum and Archives would be Councillor Melnick. The Legislative Committee would be comprised of Councillor Demota, Councillor Hall, and Mayor Ireland. The Regional Assessment Review Board would be Councillor Wilson. The Trans-Canada Yellowhead Highway Association required 2 appointees, I believe. That would be Councillor Kelleher MP and Councillor Melnick. The West Yellowhead Community Futures would have 2 council appointees and 1 alternate. The appointees would be Councillor Kelleher MP and Councillor Demota, with the alternate being Councillor Wilson. And the West Yellowhead Regional Waste Management Authority would be Councillor Wilson and Mayor Ireland. And I think that there is a list there sort of for your scoring, Mayor Ireland, of balancing of the sort of workload among councillors, but that is the list as it was shared with administration this morning.
Thank you for that, Mr. Given. And the one change there is with the Trans-Canada Yellowhead Highway Association, although I thought there were 2 appointees, there is 1 and an alternate, so that will change to an appointment of Councillor Melnick and Councillor Kelleher MP as the alternate. And I do apologize, that was an internal document that I hadn't anticipated would become a public document. So I used first names rather than surnames, and I apologize for that. Was not trying to be too familiar with all of that, but it was easier for me to do it in that fashion. But that is the list. And so with that one change with respect to Trans-Canada Yellowhead Highway Association appointment, could I have someone make a motion that that be the list of appointments adopted by council? Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, thank you for that. I just wanted to share that with the public. And well, I make the motion that council appoint the following councillors to the to the following committees and boards as per the document that we just reviewed, and to have that formally attached to the agenda post meeting.
Thank you for that, Councillor Wilson. I will call for debate, although I assume that we would have heard it by now. I will therefore call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. There are none opposed. Thank you. And recognize that it is always possible through the term to make adjustments to committee assignments. Nothing is necessarily ever closed. So if circumstances change in anyone's personal life where there are conflicts, or either individual conflicts or conflicts of time, just let me know and we can do reassignments as necessary. That completes the necessary business of the organizational meeting. So an easy introduction to new councillors, a fairly straightforward and relatively concise meeting. Is there any other business for this organizational meeting today? If not, I will welcome a motion to adjourn. No one wants to be first. Councillor Kelleher MP, I will take the motion from you. Before I call the question, I thank all of those members of the public who tuned in, and you saw the meeting schedule. So the next one is indicated, I think, as, oh, I'm not sure where we are. November 2nd, I guess, will be our first regular meeting. So I look forward to seeing you all back. Councillor Demota, I was about to call the question to adjourn. You had your hand up?
Nope, I was going to encourage Councillor Hall to make the motion so that she would be on the first official agenda. Everybody else has already. So anyway, next time.
All right, I will call the motion, or call the question on the motion to adjourn. All those in favor? There are none opposed. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much. See you at our next regular meeting on November the 2nd.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.